Another day. Another day, and a lot more voices, more knowledge, hopefully. Quick note for the substantial amount of people that are emailing about going fishing this month. Sarah said to me that apparently our fascist government of Canada is not allowing people to cross the border unless you're vaccinated. I thought it was open to travel. I thought it was open to travel back and forth driving. I was texting with Dave Plas the other day, and he seemed to think it was full go. I don't know. So, before I guess, if you are going to email, inquire about coming fishing for salmon halibut with me, do your own due diligence first and find out if you can travel across the border first, and that'll save Sarah about 15 freaking emails each person, all right? And figure it out first if you can cross the border. If it is from south border, you're looking to travel from. And then you can email to book@howtohunt.com. It's amazing, isn't it? Isn't it amazing the absolute zero common sense, irresponsible decision making and moves? And it makes you wonder why nobody trusts the piece of shits that are in the governments today. Think about it. Proven fact, even though you're vaccinated, you can carry the virus and become infected by it. That's a proven fact, and you can die from it. Although you're vaccinated, that's a fact. That's fine. Now, if you look at it from a common sense point of view, if you are not vaccinated, they don't want you crossing a border, okay? Because you might infect people. You might carry the virus and infect people. But if you are vaccinated and you can still carry any virus and infect any crowd of people, if you're vaccinated, you're still allowed to cross the border and dive into a busy mall the next day without being tested or anything. And then there's a certain handful of people that would actually get angry at me for saying that publicly. Right? Doesn't make sense, does it? It's absolute lunacy. 110%. And also is absolute fuel for anybody with any kind of rational common sense at all in them to question what the F's going on. Right? Let me say it one more time for anybody who might be here that might possibly be somebody who wears a mask when they're driving the car with the windows rolled up alone. The government will not allow you to travel unless you are vaccinated. Because you might be carrying a virus. Even though there is a test that you can take that the government supplied that takes 15 minutes to decide whether or not you've got a virus. You're sick or not, okay? There's some huge question marks right there that 110% of the population should be questioning. Oops, so you are vaccinated. You are? Oh, come on over. Come on over and dive into this live concert we got going on with like 50,000 people there. No problem. Yeah, but I might be carrying a virus anyway. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We don't care if you're transporting a virus. We really don't. We just care about you accepting that vaccination, that you cannot sue anybody if it trashes your life, and if you die from it, your life insurance doesn't cover it. But that's okay. Come on over and cross the border and dive into that crowd here in our country, even though we know you can be transmitting a deadly disease. Potentially. I don't know how more simpler I can deliver those alarming, absolute alarming, embarrassing, tragic, irresponsible moves going on today. And I'm saying it as calm as I can. If I was by myself right now, every second word would be an F-bomb, and I would be freaking... Yeah. It's very frustrating. I don't know how so many people are complying. It's amazing to me how many people are going along with that bullshit show. It's amazing to me. Families are excommunicating family members because you didn't get vaxxed. You can't come over and see you can't come and see your grandchildren because you're not getting a vaccination. I don't care if 10 of your neighbors died from it. Go get it. Or you can't see your grandchildren ever again. Right? How many people are absolute out to lunch? Did you ever think that maybe if you're one of those wackos, which I'm pretty certain there's not too many of those wackos on this channel by now, that's for sure. You wonder why all those wackos that have been conditioned to turn against their neighbor and their family members because they think they're going to get murdered by somebody who doesn't accept that farce needle. Well, I don't know, maybe go buy a 20-pack of the tests and have it in a little jar at the foot of your porch and tell everybody to test themselves. It's only 15 minutes before they come into your house if you're so scared shitless. You absolute losers. I'm growling, aren't I? All right, there we go. There's your rant of the day. I mean every single word I say about that when it comes to that topic, and I will die before I change my mind. I will die fighting like an animal before I change my mind on my stance, on the absolute insanity going on this planet, and for all you people who might be offended or think I'm a little off side, I'd die for you fighting to make shit right. I'm so angry. So angry. Anyway, for obvious reasons, I'm going to bite my lip. Now, let's hear some voices. It's one thing I can do, and continue to piss off the people that don't want these voices heard. Come and try and stop me. Sasquatch angry over target practice? ? Is the title of this one. Hi Steve, as always. As you always say, if I'm sending you this, I already have a good idea what happened. But this is just weird. A group of us were target practicing and sitting and sighting in guns. Way behind the shooting pits is a ridgeline with cedar trees. I noticed a brownish red one in the middle. Figured it was just a dead cedar. Continued to shoot my Ruger 44, my 9mm, then got foggy. I put my guns down, stepped back from all the other shooting. I said, if you are here, we are not here to hurt you. Just enjoying some family time and have no intention of hurting any living thing. Please do not make us afraid or come down here. Now, I don't know if there was a Sasquatch out there, although the dead cedar did change positions. But after I said this, I started to stumble a little when I walked. I did not shoot again. All the guns started to jam. I was going to walk the quarter mile back to the car on my own, but I talked my husband's ear off about David Paulides, so he made me stay. We decided to leave. As soon as I got into our vehicle, I passed out asleep. I was out cold for almost 18 hours. That's really, really weird. Was this a missing 411 attempt? I didn't see anything else. I didn't hear anything. I thought allergies, but all our guns jammed. And there were many guns of different caliber. It just seemed strange. Anyway, thanks for sharing. Stay safe out there. Excuse me. That is strange. That's really strange. One thing that my brain started to react to was when you said, just family time, no intention of hurting any living thing. I don't think they give a shit. They harm a lot of living things. So, I mean, I've heard of other people out there saying, I promised I'm never going to go hunting ever again. I'm never going to go into your forest. I'm never going to shoot anything or eat anything ever again. Don't kid yourselves. They don't give a shit. They're killing shit and eating it just the same as we are. Okay? They're not the almighty caretakers of nature and giving them big lovey hugs every day. They're not. When you see them ripping the leg off of a deer and hanging it in a tree, or ripping a dog in half, or clubbing an elk in the head and running away with it, or grabbing a bear under its arm, or a mountain goat under its arm to go rip it apart and eat it, it's quite fine. They understand why we hunt. That's not a message to the emailer. That's a message to everybody, just in case everybody is wondering. The guns jamming, that's not a common one at all. What is common is power, electronics losing power. I remember Dave telling me a while back, He was on a hike and their electronics all went dead straight across the board. Cameras, nothing would work. And then when they came back through that point of the trail again, all of a sudden the camera started working again. What's up with that? Right? But we haven't, that's the first time I've heard of guns jamming. All guns jamming. That's really, really odd. And the passing out and sleeping for 18 hours, that's really alarming too. Who knows what happened? Who knows what was going on there? I don't know. I haven't a frickin' clue. Maybe somebody had a similar experience. If they did, you might have just encouraged them to email it in. That's a weird one. And that's a very, very good choice to stay with your husband. I don't let Sarah get too far away from me ever when we're out in potential zones where weird shit could happen. All right, what's this title? This is a title. People of the Woods. There's some photos in here. Hi, Steve. As I watch your channel faithfully, I have to thank you for bringing awareness to this topic. Not only do we have Sabe, there are plenty of other harmful dwellers in the woods. So I thought I'd share what the Quran says about the dwellers of the woods. This confirms what is going on and explains all that people are now seeing. No other religious book touches on this topic. I was astonished that I stumbled on this. These are the chapters in the Quran I found where it mentions these beings. Surah, S-U-R-A 1578. Quote, and the dwellers of the wood, i.e., the people of the Madian, to whom Prophet Shuaib was sent by Allah, were also Zalimun, polytheists, wrongdoers. So we took vengeance on them. They are both on an open highway, plain to see. And we gave them our signs, but they were averse to them. And they used to hew out dwellings from the mountains, feeling themselves secure. But as Zaya, prophet, torment, awful cry, overtook them in the early morning of the fourth day of their promised punishment days. Surah 38-13, and Thamud, and the people of Lot, and the dwellers of the wood. Such were the Confederates. Surah 50:14. This chapter says that these beings are in fact human beings. However, my understanding is that they are evil, as they rejected God, and it reads, the dwellers of Al-Aqah, near Midian, believed the messengers. When Shuaib, prophet, said to them, will you not fear Allah and obey him? I am a trustworthy messenger to you. So fear Allah, keep your duty to him, and obey me. No reward do I ask of you for it. My reward is only from the Lord of mankind and jinn, and all that exists. Give full measure and cause no loss to others, and weigh with the true and straight balance, and defraud not people by reducing their things, nor do evil, making corruption and mischief in the land. And fear him who created you and the generations on the men of old. They said, you're only one of those bewitched. You are but a human being like us, and verily we think that you are one of the liars. So, cause a piece of heaven to fall on us if you are of the truthful. It further states that they are not believers. After reading that, I need more confirmation. I need no more confirmation. They are humans created by God, yet they do not follow the natural law of the Creator. So what does that make them? Evil. Be careful out there, people. They have no regard for God, so they have no regard for you. Thank you, Steve, for bringing awareness to this topic, as I had no clue. Thought it was a tale. I'm 55 years old, and everything they said wasn't real. Is real. It exists, and it's all being unleashed on us. Thank the USA for keeping us in the dark of something that could have prevented endless deaths, duress, stress, and fear. Those in charge are really effing crazy. Shake my head. Mia Williams. Attached 2 clear photos of a being in New Jersey we have flying around attacking / chasing people, their cars, etc. It's called the New Jersey devil, and in fact a real being. All right, well that's definitely one hell of an odd photo. I'll show it to you guys this way. Never seen that before. A little odd. Actually really odd. What else do we got? Check this out. That's a little odd too, isn't it? And again, they're photographs. We glance at them and then we swipe to the next page, right? But anyway, thanks for sending that in. That'll be interesting to some and not to others. All right, now, I've got so many emails in here and a lot of them aren't experiences of people who need to be heard. All right, what do we got here? This seems to be I think I recognize this name. All I've got and then some. All right, let me get some more of this juice in me for this one then. Steve, first of all, I hope you, your family, and everyone that is associated with this channel is doing well and remains so. Second, everyone dealing with cancer, as I am as well, even if it's just skin cancer. You have my deepest sympathy, and I want you to take comfort in knowing many are praying for you. I mentioned myself having cancer as well, not for recognition, but knowing the power of prayer. I was hoping to collect some of it for myself too, LOL. Now on to the main purpose of this email, Steve. I know you want all of us who write in to tell what we know and not wait for another time to write in. So here it comes. This is going to be a long one. It covers the Sabbath, evil spirits, and many members of my family who have lived in this affected area within a stretch of just half a mile. These are not separate topics, although it might sound this way. But I believe everything that has happened is all connected, as Sasquatch, orbs, and UAVs often are. UAV. Steve, I apologize ahead of time for this cluster of misplaced, but I'm going to sneeze. Well-meaning placed shit. Excuse me. I hate sneezing. Steve, I apologize ahead of time for this cluster of misplaced, but well-meaning placing of commas and paragraphs. Throw it at me. I can deal with anything now. Back in the early 70s, the mother of a friend of mine, along with a close relative of hers, both in their teens, decided it would be a good idea to get out a Ouija board and experiment with it. That's not a good idea, ever, for anyone. I don't give a shit what anyone says. It's not a good idea. I'm not sure the exact details of how the idea of conjuring came up, but it came about nonetheless. Evidently, they had something materialize in front of them, scary enough to make them run into the house owned by my friend's parents, which is about 300 feet from where I live now. My friend's father, who's in the house, saw that the two girls who ran in, one of the girls being his wife, were extremely scared and asked what the problem was. Hearing their explanation, which was enough to make him grab a firearm and run outside. When he came back in, he evidently had experienced something resembling something we know now as a Sasquatch. Whether it was that or another type being, I don't know. He didn't know anything of the subject at the time, but it scared him so bad, he told his wife to pack up the kids, and they instantly headed south to Massachusetts, even trying to become a priest because of his experience. Now, if I was to tell all the experiences that have happened, I feel are related to this in their entirety, it would take up every bit of an hour-long video and probably half of another. So I will try and tell you of the experiences that followed without doing so. It will include my friend and his family and mine. I'll take this time to mention that the friend I speak of is the same friend I had the experience with that I first wrote into you about. This first experience I'll mention will be the time that my friend and his little brother, who were sleeping just a half a mile from the original story of his mother and her relatives conjuring, was him at a young age walking up to a very bright light going back and forth by their window, and the sound equivalent to a jet flying over their head. If you were to look out the windows of this little cottage, you'd be able to see the island where me and his friend had our own experience that I previously wrote in about. Island, reef fishing or something? Sounds a little familiar. The second is just a few hundred feet from the original place I mentioned it from the beginning. This is another experience that my two nieces had with their own Ouija board. They had been ignorantly playing with said Ouija board for a few days, until finally one day after playing with it, they were using spray paint, just messing around on a piece of sheetrock, when, before their eyes, the paint formed into something very similarly resembling the thing that was originally seen at the original spot the story began with. Not long before or after the time that had happened, they both were run out of the woods. Just a few yards behind the house, they used the Ouija board in by something that was growling at them and pacing them just inside the woods, with footsteps that sounded like something weighing at least 800 to 1,000 pounds. The spot that happened was the same spot that just one of the same nieces had her nighttime experience with, the human-bodied creature with the deer's head I wrote in to you last time. The last thing I'm going to tell you about this is what happened to my brother just before he died a little over a year ago. If I tell you of everything that's happened, there's just not enough room. My brother mentioned to me, just about a month or so before he left this world, that he was walking down the road at night and heard some animal walking behind him. It was something big enough that he felt threatened. It kept coming up behind him, getting closer and closer until he felt as though he had to turn around and fight whatever it was. As he turned, there was absolutely nothing there. After telling me this story, he asked me if I believe in this sort of thing. Immediately I responded, yes, I do. That was the second to last conversation I had with him. The experience also happened just feet from the original experience I mentioned. Steve, I fear this mishmash of things I've talked about might not make much sense because there's so much more to tell about. I did my best to try to minimize everything and reduce it down to something that could be read in a small amount of time, but I fear I failed. LOL. I'm just going to throw all this at you, at the wall, and hope it sticks. At least I hope it makes enough sense so that someone can benefit in some sort of way. That is why we're here after all, right? If I were to mention everything that I'd like to, for instance, the things that are going on today having to do with the politics of America and our brothers and sisters to the north of Canada, I'd just completely blow my top and ramble until I made even YouTube's algorithm cry. So I'll stop there. I truly wish you and your family all the best, Steve, and I'm happy you get to enjoy those mountains. Yes, once again, you can mention my name. Life's too short to give a sweet shit what anyone thinks anyways. The crazy mania, Sean Reed. Okay, thanks, crazy Sean. Kidding, man. Appreciate it, and the rambling part, believe me, I can relate. My mind and my mouth don't mesh up all that smooth at all times. Why? I don't know. Those Ouija boards, I don't even know where you get them. I remember I was at some friends when I was like 20 years old, I believe, 19. And I joined in with these two girls, never knew them. They didn't know anything about me, and I asked the damn thing a couple questions and it answered accurately, and I launched my fingers off that damn thing as fast as I could, and swore I would never go within 10 feet of those one of the boards ever again. I never have. There's nothing good about them. I don't know who sells them, but whoever sells them probably shouldn't support that business anymore. And if you have one in your house, burn it. Burn it. Anyway, man, mail back anytime, all right? Mail back anytime, especially if you got something that's going to help somebody. And I'm sad to hear how your brother passed. You didn't say how. Hope it wasn't related to all this shit. Share if you can, reply if you don't, please. Steve, pretty obvious. You've run a boat before. Nice work throwing it up, minimizing the weight. Beautiful. Quick question for you and a comment. Have you ever hooked into a metal noggin, steelhead, in salt water? I had a coworker nail a 26-pound hen years ago, and he said it was the fastest thing he ever bent a hook in, except for a tuna. His comment was that at first that was what he thought he had done. Just curious, kind of fishing for a fish story. Thank you for all your hard work and dedication to your unique channel. You can take pride and comfort in knowing that you're helping people every single day. Keep your hook sharp and powder dry and watch your six. All right, The only time I ever seen a steelhead caught in the ocean up here in British Columbia was when I was commercial fishing on a trawler, and we caught one. And I think that was probably around 50 miles offshore. We caught a wild steelhead on the trolling gear. It's the only time I have. I know other people that have. Excuse me again. All right. This is titled The Home of Sasquatch. Hi, Steve, big fan of your show. I've written in the past. You can use my name and my friend's name. Sasquatch, I believe, had a cabin in Tahoe. Sounds weird. Yes, it does. But let me tell you what me and my best friend discovered. In Tahoe, there's a lake called Fallen Leaf. You have to drive back down a winding one-lane road to get to it. You have to go back in the woods to where they had a lodge, an actual lake was. There are many hiking trails, campsites, cabins, and cabins that had half a tarp covers. Okay, so where our cabin was, this is what they called a tentette, a half a tarp. It was like a 2-bedroom place. Had a kitchen, but a rustic like ice box. You would put ice blocks in to cool it. Cupboards had locks to keep bears and critters out of. Okay, so this cabin's way deep in the woods, not really accessible to the public, and you would have to know it was there. Couldn't see it from the road or hiking trails. The owners of the lodge would have to give you directions to get there. When I asked about how many knew of this cabin, they claimed maybe a handful at the time. See, the cabin had caught fire 10 years prior, so they no longer used it. So the owners were very surprised I found it. Okay, so I went up there due to I caught a glimpse of it from the hiking trail. So I went there. I did see fire damage and was surprised it really wasn't that bad. So I looked around. The whole time I got a very bad, creepy feeling. My original thought it was haunted. Maybe the owner's hiding something, like a person died there, LOL. Okay, Steve, I was a teen with wild imagination. But see, there were long hairs stuck to the top of the door frames, side of the doors, stuck on the bed frames, on chairs in the kitchen. My first thought was bears. And thinking on it, why would bears use chairs on the beds? I took my friend up there, didn't say anything. Just found a cool cabin we could hang out at to get away from the adults and do party kind of stuff. Like we stole beers. Okay, so she got there. She was saying, wow, the place is creepy. Steve, there's nothing old about this cabin. Nothing different than the cabin we stayed in, except we had a real cabin with a roof. So, me and her went a few times, and then she was too scared to go there. I'm thinking, it's got to be haunted. I went with a few more times over the years, still found hair. One time I found the icebox open. How weird. So I watched that cabin close all summer long. No one went there. So the next summer we went up my friend Becky, instead, being a haunted feeling, thought she'd seen a Bigfoot. I laughed, of course. I was a non-believer back then. But then I wondered, did Bigfoot live there? Okay, I'm really having wild thoughts. I blew it off a few days. So I went up, got some of those hairs, asked the ranger/owner what kind of animal. He said, wow, never seen anything like this. The hair was about 3 to 5 inches, light colored, not human. You could tell. He said only black bears up there. So maybe a raccoon. But puzzled, he thought, nah, and basically didn't know. Okay, so me and my friend come up with this wild idea. Let's leave food. So we put an orange in the icebox, and the next day it was gone. We collected all the hair each time we were there, and every time we went back, hair was there again. It wasn't much, we really had to look for it. So we played the leave the orange apple thing for weeks. And we left a package of ramen in the cupboard. And mind you, these cupboards had sort of a lock on it. It was bear and critter proof, but the ramen was gone. So we thought, okay, let's leave a can of something. So we put a can of tuna, wiped it with tuna juice and left it. Well, whatever it was didn't take it. So we went to a candy bar, health bar, ramen, boxed cereal, other things, fruit, always disappeared. We did that for 3 summers. But the whole time we still had that very creepy feeling. My friend only seen it one time, and later my sister said she thought she'd seen him. Me, I wasn't sure. I know ghosts don't eat food, so there's something there. Over the years I've thought about it. I get a giggle. I do believe now, but what's funny is the thought that Sasquatch could have a house. Always hair on the bed, chairs, and doorways. I said it is possible. I say it is possible. So years later we went there and I looked around and there was a lot of hair stuck in different spots. I assume he's still living there. I hope no one finds that cabin in the woods. I smile and giggle. He needs a house. I hope you read this. I've tried a few times. Maybe you'll catch your eye. I sent info. Anyway, thanks again for all you do. Ellie, Investigators News. All right, that sounds odd, but I guess there's one thing you could do is leave a trail camera there, right? Not that it would get a Sasquatch on it, but if it was anything but, you might get it on the camera. And those hairs, I don't know. The DNA thing's been done so many times, it's ridiculous, right? And if you send it to the wrong people, they're just going to screw you over and make them disappear and say it was a bear or an elk. Guaranteed. But, why would you want to send the government anything anyways? The government is full of criminals. And I'm not saying that out of just being a loose cannon. That's fact. Our governments are full of absolute criminals. They're the last people in the world I need to be told anything from. And that should be the same for all of you. They're the last ones that we actually need anything from except to disappear and be filled with responsible, rational, good people to do what we hire them to do, right? So you send the hairs to that group of people, you're just going to get screwed over. And if you get the DNA comes back anyways, it's not going to come back as no different than Dave Plitus and other people have already done. But it's an interesting story and experience to say the least. Do you still have the hairs? You should take a picture of them. Put them all on a possible flat black or a black without a shine piece of paper or something and take a photo and send it in. Somebody might be interested in seeing those. Bigfoot, 8-foot hairy biped, stalks man and dog in Idaho, high desert. Hello, Steve. This might seem unbelievable to some people, but it's 100% true. It's burned into my memory, and I will never forget it, even the small details. I present it to you exactly as it happened. I grew up in the high deserts and mountains of southeast Idaho. Most of my life has been spent outdoors, whether it was on the back of a horse pushing cattle for local ranchers or hunting elk, or on foot hunting rabbits and deer through the sagebrush. I was given my first .22 rifle when I was 9 years old and spent every minute I could out in the lava flows. I was given my first .22 rifle when I was 9 years old and spent every minute I could out in the lava flows hunting rabbits, rock chucks, and sage hens. I remember several times that my mother or father would drop me and my best friend off somewhere along the lavas and pick us up at the same spot 3 or 4 days later after many miles of exploring and living off the land. All we would take is water, shells, and a knife. When I got older and had my own vehicles, my trips got longer and farther into the desert. As I write this, I can smell the sagebrush and feel the desert sun in my face. Suffice to say, I love that Idaho desert more than any place on earth. I feel more comfortable out in the desert, 30 miles from the closest person, than I do in my own living room. I can relate. Mountains for me. During the summer of 2001, I was south and slightly east of the Big Southern Butte. I spent a couple of days looking for arrowheads. Everything had been pretty normal. I walked for miles, found a few arrowheads, saw a few coyotes and deer, pretty normal. At this time in my life, I always had my dog with me. Good move. He was a huge Chesapeake retriever that weighed over 100 pounds. He was very protective of me and my belongings and was meaner than hell to anyone who acted suspicious or threatening. His surly demeanor towards anybody who messed with me or my stuff earned him the name Cain. With my family and friends, the name stuck. Cain loved to go anywhere I went. He loved to go out to the desert and run around, never getting too far away from me. I always felt very secure with him around because he had proven time and time again that he was aware of every living thing that approached us in the desert. And if that thing was dangerous, whether human or animal, he held no qualms about tearing right into the middle of them. In fact, he enjoyed it. Anyway, we made it back to the pickup truck an hour or so before it got dark. I gathered up some juniper branches and sagebrush to make a fire. I cooked up some dinner for my dog and then settled into a hammock for the night. There's nothing better than sleeping in a hammock while outdoors. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of trees in the desert, so I would find a juniper or a fence post, park my pickup close to it, and tie one end of my hammock to the pickup bed and one end to the tree or a fence post. I spent many comfortable nights rigged up like this. For me, I understand hammocks are comfortable, but for me, it just makes me cringe. Like, I seriously cringe and shudder at the thought of me using a hammock where I go. All I picture is either getting clotheslined by a moose, clotheslined by an elk, or grabbed like a frickin' suspended taco by a grizzly bear. I can't picture being in a hammock and being able to react quickly if any kind of weird shit went down, or even the horses running around hobbled at night, and the horse getting spooked and chased by something and T-boning me as I'm slung between two trees. So yeah, the hammock thing, I think it'd probably be great in a backyard, but I think it'd be suicide for me to try where I go hang out. This night was no different. I climbed into my hammock and was soon asleep. A couple of hours later, I woke up to raindrops. It started raining pretty hard and I was getting pretty wet. I quickly threw all my gear into my hammock, untied the end from the fence post, rolled it up with everything inside it, and tossed it into the back of my pickup with the tarp over it to keep it dry. With all of my gear safely stowed, Kane and I crawled into the cab of the pickup and settled in for a dry, if cramped, rest of the night. Around 3 a.m. in the morning, a strange sound woke me up. I was reclined back as best I could in the driver's seat, and Kane was sitting up alert on the passenger side. He was growling very softly, and the hair on his shoulders and neck was standing straight up. A very menacing and very intimidating sight. I'm glad he was on my side. He was looking over my shoulder out the driver's side window. It was his quiet growling that had woke me up. I didn't move, but I just opened my eyes and looked around by moving my eyes in their sockets. It had stopped raining, and the clouds had gone away. The sky was now clear, with a bright, almost full moon overhead. It was bright enough that I could see Kane very clearly. I wondered what he was focusing all of his attention on and lifted my hand up in front of his nose. I don't know why I did that, but that's what I did. He never even looked at me, but moved his head to the side so he can continue to watch whatever was out my driver's side window, continuing his quiet, threatening growl. That'd be alarming as shit. I'd never seen Kane so focused on anything the way he was now. It sent a shot of adrenaline through me, and I was immediately wide awake. It gave me the goosebumps, and the hair stood up on my arms and my neck. I was scared to turn my head and look out the window. I wasn't sure that I wanted to see what was outside. I summoned the courage and slowly turned my head to the left and looked out my window. About 50 yards away, slightly behind the truck and slowly working its way closer towards me, was a large, dark figure. In the bright moonlight, I could see that this thing was covered in long, coarse hair. It was walking on two legs, moved like a man but different. Its arms seemed longer, and it kind of had a swaying motion as it walked. The moon shone through the hair around the outside of its body, and the dark solid shape underneath was visible. It was moving in slow steps towards the pickup. Every few steps it would stop, crouch down, wait a few seconds before moving ahead a couple more steps, exactly as my dad had taught me to do while stalking deer and elk. I have no idea if this creature meant to do me harm, but seeing it move exactly as I did when putting the stalk on a deer with me as the target of its attention did not make me feel very warm and fuzzy inside. My mind was in overdrive. Imagine my reality of what exists and doesn't exist in this world was suddenly and without much fanfare turned upside down. At the same time, for the first time in my life, It would happen many more times in the near future in a crappy place called Iraq. Genetically inherited but deeply buried alarm bells were screaming inside my head. My subconscious recognized the danger and demanded that I do something, while at the same time dumping bucket loads of adrenaline into my system. That adrenaline is absolute overload, man. When I had that adrenaline, when I had to walk out of the woods after that thing was waiting for me, squatting over that trail, the adrenaline is a tough thing to coexist with at that moment, and you have to make the right moves and decisions and keep your shit together. My thoughts jumped immediately to my pistol, and in the same instant, I remember that it was rolled up in my hammock in the back of my pickup under a tarp. Useless. Not that my pistol would do any good. As this thing got closer, I could see that it was big, probably 7 or 8 feet tall and solid. It moved like an animal that is very heavily built, but is quick and fast at the same time, like a tiger maybe. Kane had gone from sitting to standing on the seat. His hair was standing straight up, and his quiet growl had turned into a savage snarl. What a dog. Here's this monster outside my truck, and my dog is ready for me to open the door and turn him loose. No shit. Crazy. Most dogs be trying to crawl into the front seat, passenger side. My mind quickly switched from fight mode to flight mode. My keys were in the ignition, thank God. Without taking my eyes off this thing, I reached up and started the pickup. The creature was less than 30 yards away now. When it heard the engine start, it crouched down lower to the ground than it had crouched before. The top of its pointy head was just above the level of a patch of sagebrush that happened to be between him and me. My pickup was nosed up to a lava rock wall. The only trail out was to my right and behind. There were large lava rocks scattered on the ground, so I had to make an over 180-degree turn while backing up to be lined up with the road. I threw the truck in reverse and floored it. Turning my lights turning on my lights at the same time. As I swung through the turn, my high beam swung right across the creature. It had put its head down, probably to protect from the glare, and all I saw was the top of its head. I noticed a mass of coarse, dark gray hair before its shape was swallowed by the darkness. I drove down that 2-track desert road way faster than I normally would. My truck was bouncing over rocks and plowing over sagebrush when the curves were too sharp to take at that speed. Kane and I were bouncing all over inside. I drove that way for several miles, continuously looking behind me until I calmed down enough to slow down. I drove out to the main road and stopped to mentally go over what I had just seen. Stopping out there in the dark was too much. I ended up cutting my trip short and just went home. Was it true? You be the judge. There you go. Sounds scary to me. One thing that I just do not understand. One thing I don't understand, I don't get. Very, very, very confusing for me is these things outclass the shit out of us. They could rip us in half anytime they felt like it. They could punch a hole through the side of our house or cabin anytime they felt like it and be inside and grab us before we even managed to dial 911 or grab a gun. That's a fact. Now, these same beings that can do that shit themselves and run when we see them or try to hide from us. Okay? But then, those same beings intentionally sneak up as close as they can to us. I don't get it, because if you try to be one of them, switch the tables around just for a minute. Picture this one. You are quietly walking through the forest for whatever reason. Oh, you look over. Maybe there's a campfire. Let's just say they use a campfire, just for shits and giggles. There's a campfire. Whatever. There's 3 or 4 or 5, I don't know, 8 to 12 foot tall, 400 to 900 pound beings sitting around in a circle bullshitting with each other in the forest right through there. Do you really think that you are going to belly crawl and see how close you can get up to those things? Not ever. Said everyone. Not a frickin' chance in hell. Right? Why is it just so? What I'm saying is the display of them seeing us in a vehicle or in a camp and slowly sneaking up and focused to getting closer to us tells me there's zero fear there. There's zero respect for us as a danger there. Nothing. Right? There's nothing there. They don't respect us at all. They don't feel us a threat at all. They know exactly what we are, and they know exactly what they're doing when they're slowly belly crawling up or stalking up on us in a campground sitting around a fire. That's huge balls. That's absolute courage and confidence. Period. And it absolutely contradicts how they react on average in broad daylight when you see them. They run. We even heard numerous people say they go, they hear that sound, and it'll take off after it sees that it sees one of us. It's such a confusing thing for me, that detail of them stalking us with absolute confidence, where the next day, I can't say it's the same one, but the next day, numerous eyewitness accounts are of them shitting themselves and running faster than they can run and disappearing or hiding behind a tree. Hiding and running and hiding. Run and hide. You're going to turn around and belly crawl to within feet of human beings the next night. Doesn't make sense to me. What's that all about? What are they testing? What are they looking for? What are they trying to sense? What are they possibly going in to see about those individual humans? You know, it's very odd, that detail for me. Everything's odd though, right? Nothing makes sense in this lifetime at this stage of the game. Once you start gaining knowledge, and you kick the mainstream system to the curb, it's just mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. Anyway, I'm going to keep going. We're going to hear more. What a shitty experience, man. What a shitty experience. Lots of people have had them stalking up on them parked in a car. All right, what's this one? Hi, Steve. Hi back. I'm so appreciative of the channel and you taking the time to help us all and give the people a safe place to share experience. I've really enjoyed the last 3 videos intensely. Okay, this is May 5th. The one with the chickens and the pelican had me cackling more than the chickens were. I had to keep backing it up because I was laughing so much I couldn't hear it. That must have been when I was shooting at the chickens from right here. I'm loving the beauty of the area and the wildlife you're sharing with all of us, and congratulations on the beautiful steelhead. It was such fun to watch, and I was holding my breath till you had them in your hands. That's something to share. I wonder if anyone else has seen these beings anywhere else. I've heard a share about a creature called Momo, the Missouri monster. The half a dozen or so I have seen are similar to Sasquatch, but their faces are completely covered with hair, as their whole body. They are various shades of black, gray, beige, and brown, extremely well camouflaged and about 6 feet tall and heavily built with very large, wide-set, red eyes that are close to the top of their head. The eyes have their own light and are very visible, even from a long distance. Supposed to have 3 toes, but I'm doubtful about that, as they are able to move as fast and balanced as any other Sasquatch-type being. They have the ability to be invisible, and I have noticed when they are together, they are individuals who have quite a large difference in size and build. It seems like the largest one is the leader, and they have the same ability to communicate with us and read our thoughts as Sabe. Really, the only thing I see different is that their face is covered with hair, and that there's more color variation in their hair. I'm curious if they are anywhere else other than the hills in Missouri and Arkansas, along rivers and swamps. You can use my name, as I am too old to give a damn what anyone thinks. Sincerely, Carl Wilbanks. Carl, I don't know, man. God, the dust in my nose here is crazy. I don't know, man. It all seems to be in the same... It's all in the same pot to me. It's all in the same pot to me. So for that I can't answer. All I can say is, I mean, at this stage of the game, it's quite obvious there's a shit pile of odd beings, entities, whatever you want to call them, ripping around. So I don't know, man. I don't know the answer to that. Somebody might have an answer to that, but I got a funny feeling everything's in the same play at this stage of the game. All right, what do we got? You wanted the details from an old story I sent you. All right. This is May 6th. I originally sent you a story. This will shock the world. Some friends and I had went out one night to party and light off fireworks miles away from civilization. We found a place in the middle of nowhere. We'll call it a meadow / old field that was no longer in use. Basically, we had 3 tree lines that surrounded the meadow. We all went out there with a case of beer, lawn chairs, and a lantern, and a bunch of fireworks. You know, the ones that shoot the mortar balls. Eventually, we ended up shooting a dud that shot off into the tree line, and it lit up the tree like nobody's business. That sucks. That's when I realized that not even 50 yards away from us, there was a family of these hairy beings. To our surprise and theirs, they all stood up at one time with their backs to us and were gone in seconds into the darkness of the tree line. I say family because there was different sizes of them. One of them was, I would say, 8 feet tall. There was one that looked like it was around 6 feet, maybe one 4 feet, and a couple even smaller than that. The big one stood his ground and basically screamed at us, and we all fled the scene as quick as we could. I do believe it was the male and the protector of the group. I left a brand new lantern behind in my lawn chair, and we piled in the car and took off. I said that maybe we can bring these things out with fireworks because it seemed to me that they were enjoying the show, just as we were, until we made the mistake of shooting one into the tree line. We did not know they were there. There was no movement, and it was just a big surprise to everybody. The one that stood his ground, though, I would estimate that he was around 9 foot, maybe closer to 10 foot, somewhere in there. He was big. When he yelled at us, he raised his hands above his head and brought them down to his knees like he was flexing his muscles at us and screamed at the same time. We got a crystal clear view at the details due to the firework lighting up the area. He had a grayish-black face that was covered in hair except for around his eyes and his nose, and the look in his black eyes, which sparkled from the firework from 50 yards away, you could make out perfectly. It was pure anger, directed directly at us, and I've never gotten over the way he looked at us. It scared me bad enough that I left everything I owned behind me, and I jumped in the car, and honestly, we were hitting the gas pedal in the car before the ignition was even on. We don't know what we had seen that day. And I mean, we all had a good idea what it was, a Sasquatch family. It was all hard for us to take in. Not something you see every day, but I can tell you that we were lighting fireworks off for a good 30 minutes before we had one go astray. So that means they were sitting there in the grass watching the fireworks just as they were enjoying them, just as we were enjoying them, I'm sure. Not sure how they were not scared of it considering it's explosive, and you would think they would not like to be around that. Maybe the colors were interesting to them, I don't know. All I know is the group of us saved our money for weeks on end to buy all these little mortar balls to shoot up in the air and have a good night. It started out good and ended up being one of the worst, scariest nights I've ever had in my life. The thing that yelled at us had no neck. His deltoids and pectoral muscles were abnormally big. His shoulders looked like beach balls, and honestly, I've just never seen anything that big and that built, and have hair everywhere on his body. It gave us a deep scream but had a pitch to it at the same time. I can basically say it was a cross between a train and a lion. It vibrated through my chest and everybody else's, and I mean it honestly felt like my insides broke loose. No, I didn't soil myself nor to my friends, but it did something to all of us inside that's hard to explain. He did not have canine teeth. His teeth reminded me more of little squares, kind of like our teeth. Maybe a horse? I just figured I would give you some details on it as you had asked me to when you read my story the first time. This thing was very angry. I felt Like I let it down because it trusted me and my group enough to bring its whole family with him and watch these fireworks. Maybe it knew my intent was to not hurt anything or anybody, and they blended in perfectly with the grass. They stayed hidden. And then we betrayed them by letting one of our fireworks go astray and go off in the tree line. This thing, if it wanted to, you could just tell by looking at the way it was built, could have caught us all before we got in the car and took off. And honestly, it felt like he was right behind us as we ran for the car, but he wasn't. I believe it was big enough that it could have flipped the car over by itself and ripped us apart if it wanted to. The tone and the voice that thing had was scarier than anything I've ever felt or seen in my life. I just figured I would give you a little bit of details as you had asked. I appreciate the effort you're bringing to this platform. People need to know what is out there. Somebody's going to end up getting hurt or even killed. It just makes you wonder how many of them, people out there, that are missing right now, have not been found. You know what I'm saying? People that cannot come forward and tell you what happened because they're no longer alive. Thomas. And that is one hell of an experience. Do I believe that to be true? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Man, so many people. Oh, man. I'm just getting, obviously as my mood was kicked in place. The theme of my mood today was anger. Because of literally hundreds of people who showed interest in coming up and sharing time with me and fishing and telling stories, and I could even show you some places, but this piece of shit, criminal government pricks who have turned our existence upside down, taken away our right to experience this lifetime any way we please, and also keep information like this away from us. And I'm going to give you guys a quick side note, just a quick little side note. A lot of people want, those online petitions. I firmly believe those are not good. All it is it creates an email list, huge, that they sell for big dollars. Who's ever seen an online petition do shit? Ever, right? We had you may have seen it, may not have seen it, we had a bunch of truck drivers basically shut down Ottawa, the capital of Canada, and went to the political nest and shut down the city. Shut it down. Because a lot of people say, well, you can't use violence, you can't lash out, you can't do this, you can't do that, you gotta do it kind, you gotta protest kindly and with love and keep your shit together. It's the only way to do it. Well, guess what? Just so you all know, here's a heads up of rational thinking, common sense. Basically, tens of thousands of people converge on our capital, shut the city down, and that wasn't even enough to knee-jerk the prickin' power to speak to the people. He didn't even speak to anybody. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? The mother of all protests in Canadian history went down, and that wasn't even enough to make the greasy little prick come and speak to the people. Still hasn't, didn't, and carries on to impose this nasty shit on the population. What does that tell you? What do you do now? Oh, do you get into politics? Donate your life to get into politics and work your way up to the top and give him a run for his money? Yeah, right. Yeah, right. I think we're finally at the generation of this system being in place where every single position is filled with basically a criminal. So now what do you do? What do you do now? I know what my answer is, but if I said it out loud on here, I would probably have police come to the door or get gonged off of YouTube. But I'll tell you what. There's somebody out there with more skills than I have and more brains than I have, and they're ready to do something about it. Fucking count me in, man. Count me in. Count me in. I guess we can fight back with this honest knowledge is what I can do as we hope that we can come up with some answers as a group and do something soon.